I wanted to do a video on the inner workings of a mechanical hard drive specifically, and some general information on some other things related to hard drives. The audio wasn't quite going to work out as I'd hoped, and I already took apart all my failing drives, so I didn't have any others to just reshoot it, so I'm redoing the audio. That said, if you want to take apart a hard drive, there's a couple tools you will need. I call this a little guy actually, Teens Tuner. Picked this up for a few bucks at a electronics store many years ago. Has all the basic stuff I would need. The problem with this one is it is not compatible with other ones I have. They won't fit. Keep that in mind if you get some off-brand. Next, I want to go over if you just want a basic toolkit that has all the basic stuff you would need if you want to do cell phone repair, stuff like that, called eDurable. I've never heard this advertised or promoted anywhere. Pros and cons with this set. It is a nice little slick case. The drawback is the driver in this tool set is not the best. It's small, short. All around I would like something bigger and better, which you can buy several. It's compatible with iFixit, so you can buy one of their drivers or from another company and you'd be fine, but it has all the basic bits you would need, and they're pretty good quality. Then a traditional iFixit kit for your more advanced bits necessary. When I was doing cell phone repair and working on electronics more, I actually bought 2 of their plastic handles and an extra one of their metal handles, and that was just so I could just switch between bits that I used a lot that were right there. There's another one. I don't know what the technical... They always call them butters. I want to show you these real quick. These have a different look to them. I'm not sure if it's a full set of 4 or 6, how many you can get. But they're really nice, high quality, nice bearings in there. And when you're working on the different fittings, they just work really well. Looks like the brand name might be QIANLI. If you see these around, they are quite nice. So just want to go over some basic tools, show you the inner workings of a hard drive just for fun, mechanical hard drive specifically. We are going to talk about some solid state. For taking apart a hard drive, there's a couple things to keep in mind. If you want to know about data destruction, I am going to go into that a little bit. There's a big yes and no. When it comes to data destruction, most companies, just to avoid liabilities and problems, go to the shred the drive to make sure it's eliminated. That is overkill. You can recycle a lot of the stuff out of them to pull some stuff out. In the hard drive, if you take the PCB board off the back, if a drive goes bad, the data recovery companies will have a library of these boards. And what they can do is, if one part of that board went bad, they'll take it out, swap out that board, and that alone may allow them to recover the data off that drive. The platters inside the mechanical drives, laptop drives are smaller, obviously, they're a laptop. I'm not going to say this is always the case. Every one I have taken apart, maybe there's some out there that haven't, have been made out of glass. So the laptop drives, you could literally just drive a nail through them and that would shatter these and that would destroy the data. And if you want to know why you should destroy the data, I made a video some time ago. Basically no one watched it, but it's called True Tech Stories, Old Data. Go ahead and give that a watch and you'll learn why you need to destroy your old data. Now this one's been touched, so it's going to not have the shine as the other ones. They're just the smoothest, prettiest surface there is. But you can look at the back and you get an idea as to where the platter sits, and you can drive a nail through that. These are aluminum. What happens with these, if you hit them with a nail, for example, if you punch a hole in it, the head going around will hit that and cause a head crash. Much harder to retrieve the data, if at all possible. It gives a slight bend or warp to it. They would have to press it back to completely flat before they'd be able to try to recover data. Now, I'm not going to say it's totally impossible to recover data on that kind of situation. The FBI, maybe, but it comes down to a cost-benefit analysis. If you're worried about somebody in your neighborhood getting an old drive that you threw out, it's going to be useless to them because they're not going to have the expertise and want to spend the resources to get it. Generally speaking, I don't replace a drive until it really has gone bad, and it's a problem. Other than the fact it's a technology I'm familiar and used to, yes, I do have solid states on some of my computers and situations. We'll get to that in a minute. But the thing I like about mechanical drives is they tell you when they're starting to fail, generally speaking. Obviously, you can always have a spontaneous failure or it's just dead. Those are much more rare. I don't know that I've ever had that happen unless the drive had been dropped or something external affected the drive. I don't think I've ever had a drive go bad like that. But it'll start telling me it's starting to fail by a clicking sound. Click, click, click. The arm's starting to move back and forth. Yes, you are going to see a hard drive working with its housing open. It can be done. I've known people insisted this was totally impossible. Again, these are failing drives. I wouldn't trust these anyway, but you can pull it open and you can see it. Something else to keep in mind, if you bought a new drive, you could take the lid off, open it up, and see it. You could see it operating, moving, functioning as it would. Once you open it like that, I would not trust anything on that drive, but it can work. I know of an instructor many years ago that had one in a plexiglass case he used for demonstration, and you would see that drive moving, quite cool. With the arms, you see it whipping around on the platter as it's spinning. What's happening is it's scanning for the information. What's moving it back and forth is not a little servo or electric motor. It's actually an electromagnetic field. Time was taking apart a hard drive was the only way to get hold of rare earth magnets, neodymium magnets. Nowadays you can order them online, they're all over the place, but back in the day, this was like the only way to get them. Unless I had two brand name drives that are pretty much the same thing, I don't think I've ever had two drives come apart the exact same way with all the stuff inside. The top cover is usually stainless steel. I always say usually because I've never heard officially it always is. I can't think of one time I didn't see it as stainless steel, and the body is cast aluminum. They do that because they don't want anything that will be magnetic that will affect the drive. But at the back of the arm, on the reverse side of the arm, there's a coil of wire. As it runs electrical current through that, it makes a magnetic field. Reacting with the magnet, it'll whip that head back and forth very quickly and with very high precision. There are times you don't see it move, it just goes straight to the position. It's just an aspect I like. With data recovery, another thing they can try is taking the platter out of one drive, putting it in another. That would require clean room, a lot of expertise, and they'd have to make sure it's the same revision, brand name. Because with the board, if they did a different revision and it's slightly different configuration on that board, PCB board, that would affect or may affect whether or not that drive will work at all. You can't just take a board off one drive, put it on another drive, even within the same company, and have it work. Same manufacturer may have had a revision change and adjusted some other stuff, and it may not work with another drive. If you took one from a different brand name and put it in a different housing, it would not work. So generally speaking, if a drive's going bad or you're replacing it, get all your data off of it so you don't need it anymore. Format the drive. Delete the partition and format it. Yes, some of the ones and zeros will still remain. But a lot of that is really overblown. Even, I can't remember his name, but the researcher that discovered that you could see some of the ones and zeros remaining said the paranoia of that data is being a little overblown. Yes, you can see some remnant of that data. That does not mean they can actually reproduce all of that data and get it back. So it depends on what it is. But if you wanted to be thorough, take the drive apart. If somebody got hold of the platter and they wanted to try to recover that data, or you were concerned about that, if it's glass from a laptop drive, you can break it easily, wrap it in a paper towel, snap it real easily, break it all up. If it's aluminum, you could just literally heat it up, put it on a stove burner, heat it up for a bit, toss in a fireplace if you wanted. But what I like about them they are like chimes. They're really thin. And when you get them fresh out of a drive, as long as you don't touch it, it is the smoothest surface known to mankind. It is just an incredible mirror, and it's so fun. Here is the coil of wire. You can actually unravel that if you want. The motor inside the drive, it's all pressed in and integrated. You can't really take it out. I've seen pictures of some platters up to 4 of them in a drive. I'm sure there are some that are larger. The most I've ever seen actually is a 2. I don't think I've ever seen one more. Could be wrong. This one had 2 platters in it, and both sides are red, top and bottom. So it gives you more surface area. How they used to have the hard drives is the armature, the reading write heads would have little pads on them, and they'd come into the center where it would spin down and stop. That's where they would park or rest. Once the drive went to be accessed, it would spin up in speed. Once it got up to speed, it would get what's called an air bearing. It's a pocket of air that would be trapped underneath it, and that would go seeking the data elsewhere. To increase capacity and improve overall performance, they stopped doing that, and they have them park on the side notches to rest the drive heads. While we're on the subject, one of the things that makes mechanical hard drives slower, generally speaking, is the simple fact that it needs to spin up to speed. Depending on the data you're getting, 1/3 to half the time necessary to get the data is just it spinning up the drive to get the air bearing so it can access the data. They also have a RAID 0. You take the data and spread it out over 2 different drives. What happens then is they both spin up, so that time stays the same, but your actual read time is then reduced because half the data is on the 2 different drives. So it's able to pull that data in quicker. It sped up the performance overall. Trade-off is you have 2 drives, so increased cost, etc. But you could then add a 3rd drive with the same thing. Of course, the speed up time is the same, then your read time is 1/3. It's a point of diminishing return to try to put those in there. When solid-state drives first came out, every kid, and if you're wondering, if you're under the age of 25, you're a kid. But every kid would talk about how awesome it would be to put the solid-state drives in a RAID 0. First off, it would be ridiculously expensive. Second, there was no real benefit because what are you trying to access or do? At this point, I'll go ahead and do a quick side tangent on a little bit of the development of the solid-state drive. Some things I have not heard other people talk about. Back in, I want to say it was the late 90s. I could be wrong, but I want to say it was in the late 90s. I knew somebody that might have been closer to the mid-90s, but like it matters. Anyway, I knew somebody who was talking about they were experimenting with graphite drives. And he was quite excited about this because that would mean it had no moving parts and it would be super long life. It may never fail, all this great stuff. And then I never heard anything more on them. And I want to say in the mid-2000s, I knew somebody else that was semi-connected to some areas. And so I thought, hey, he might have heard something more on this. So I mentioned it to him and asked him if he had heard anything more on the graphite drives or what's going on with that. And he said, yeah, but why would you? They had apparently had a very high failure rate and were very unstable. So it's kind of a dead end of technology, I guess. But I've never heard anything more on that. And I always thought it was interesting. One of those lines of technology that they researched and worked on. I know with the solid state drives, again, when they were first coming out, there was concern about how long of life would they have, because there was thought of the limited read-write times on them. And that seemed to not come to fruition. I've not heard anything about them dying. I've not heard anything more on that. Of course, on the back end, they've done some stuff with the programs to try to mitigate those issues. But we've not seen those issues come about. The prices have come down. The capacities have gone up. For my interest, quite frankly, for a long time, the solid-state drives were not even considered because their capacity was way too low to me even be of interest. What I'm doing, basically, is stripping them down to the different parts for recycling. You can put them through a big old shredder that'll mercilessly destroy every part of it, mix all it together, or the top, as I said, is stainless steel. Most of these screws are going to be stainless steel. This is aluminum, a lot of the components inside here. And if you take those all apart bit by bit, you will find that you can just take them apart, put them in the different parts for recycling, and get some money back on them if you have a place that does that kind of stuff. Getting back to the main reason I'm doing this is just destroying data. And I'm seeing just a lot of stuff that's going to be stubborn, pressed into place and things like that, which is a little irritating, just a little. Of course, it's not an obstacle to me because when I was a kid, I took everything apart, and I do mean everything. Need be, I used hammers. I had to get it apart. I had to know how it worked. My parents got really mad at me on several occasions, justifiably so. I just had to know how it worked. I just had to know. Yep, that data is not recoverable. You'd be hard-pressed to piece together the fingerprints.